So it's lesson 4 today, and I see I've gotten labs and quizzes from most people, not everybody in the class. Things were due last night at midnight. If you are watching this video later and you still haven't submitted your lab, um, you can still submit. You will get a deduction for late marks, but I would rather give you some marks for a late submission than no marks. So please make sure you try to submit your lab by tonight, by Friday midnight, if you are one of the students who has yet to submit. The quiz, I believe, is now closed. You had a full week to do it, so I don't think it's still available. But you can still submit the lab for part marks, which I would encourage you to do. So what are we going to do today? Well, I think we will skip over this for now. I'm going to look at assignment 1, which I'm going to give to you, go over the requirements. I'll show you some samples from past years, show you some good project submissions that I have. And then we're going to use a tool called the Express Generator. So it will scaffold, it will build out kind of an application skeleton with Node and Express. So sort of similar to the ASP.NET MVC web application template that we worked with in Visual Studio last semester, but it's not quite as fully featured. It's more slimmed down. It's not nearly as big as those .NET Core templates. And then we're going to look at, it's designed to use the MVC pattern. So we'll look at what is that MVC pattern, what does that implementation look like within the Node and Express world. And we're also going to look at a templating engine called HBS, or handlebars. So when we use the Express Generator, we actually have some different styles of view templates. When we were working in .NET, we basically used the Razor syntax, where we had a combination of HTML tags and then any server-side directives or server-side code we prefix with the @ symbol. So there's some different styles of templating we can use in views. We're going to use one called HBS. We'll play around with it a little bit, and I'll explain why later. I'll explain why we chose HBS as opposed to some of the other templating engines that are available. Right? We'll also look at hooking in Bootstrap into our Express application, starting to use the navbar and some of the Bootstrap components for CSS and layout. And the other thing we will look at doing today is deploying our site to a cloud service. So last semester, we looked at using, we used the Azure portal, Microsoft's cloud service, with its continuous integration model, where we could push our code to GitHub, and Azure was tied to our Git repository. We're going to use that continuous integration, continuous deployment process again, but this time we're going to be using a different cloud service called Heroku, which is a little easier to work with, and we're not going to have we don't have the limits around credits and usage and expiry like we had with Azure. So I want to do a quick walkthrough of assignment 1. It's available for you now on Blackboard under the Assignments tab. So let's have a look. Okay, so for this assignment, what I'm going to have you do is build a portfolio. And the idea of this portfolio is to serve as a showcase for your work. And a portfolio is something all web developers should have. It's going to help you while you're in school. It's going to help you find that graduate job or that co-op job if you're still looking for it. But it's something you should keep up to date as you go through your career. Anytime you are perhaps looking for a new job, it's great that you have an online web presence that showcases your skills and some of your work. So you're going to use Node, Express, and handlebars. We're not going to require MongoDB or Angular for assignment 1. Just Node, Express, and handlebars. You're going to host it in a cloud service, so I will recommend Heroku. It's free for us to use. It's really easy to integrate. And you can host on other cloud services. All of them will support Node and Express, but Heroku is probably the simplest. And your assignment's worth 15% of your final grade. It will be due on in a couple of weeks. So you have 2 weeks to work on this, so I would encourage you to start on it soon. To submit, sort of same stuff as usual. Link to a private repository. Make sure that you invite me, please. And make sure you include the link on Blackboard. I know you know this by now. GitHub will email me, but I don't always know which GitHub username is who. Like, I think Chris's Neon Riser I've learned by now, but make sure you put the link on Blackboard for me as well as invite me. Okay, and also give me a link to the live site on Heroku or any other cloud service that you choose to use instead. So basically, you're just submitting 2 links. You do have to do your own work. I did have this issue last year in this class where I had a student who found an online GitHub repository with someone else's public node portfolio, and they just submitted it as their own and put their own content in. But it was quite clearly, it was done very, very differently from the way we did things in class. And it took all of about 5 minutes of searching online for me to find the GitHub repository that they copied from. So don't do this. I know you all want to actually learn how to build sites with Node, so the only way to do that is to build your own website with Node. Okay, so it's not group work. Everyone needs to do their own, or you will get a minimum of 0. And all projects are subject to a code review. So the idea is not to download our in-class application, which we're going to start today. It's just to use it as a reference. Rules around external code. Can you use it? Yes, but here are the rules. I think I posted these rules last semester in our .NET site. So you can use external code if you, A, cite it, so put a comment where the code comes from, so I know that it's not yours. It can't be more than 10% of your project, so you can't copy like an entire tutorial or an entire repository worth of code. You can find a piece of code because it has some functionality you want to include. You need to understand it and put comments in, and you have to check with me first. So when in doubt, just send me a link. Say, hey, Rich, I want to use this section, this block of code, or this module from this website. Can you please take a look and just let me know if that's okay? And so if you're not sure, then just check with me first. Okay, so we'll kind of dive a little bit more into the details of your portfolio, and I'll show you samples. So the idea is really to show your skills and your work to potential clients or employers. Okay, it should include and employers. The reason we're having you build this assignment is employers are telling us. So we meet as faculty. We meet twice a year in computer studies with a whole bunch of regular employers that hire students both on co-op and graduates, and they provide us advice around curriculum and things. And they've been telling us for years that many companies don't even look at resumes anymore. They basically look at 3 items for potential job seekers. They look at your GitHub profile page, they look at your LinkedIn profile, and they want to see that you have a portfolio website. So me assigning this project is giving you a chance to build this tool, which employers are telling us they want to see. So we can look at some samples. I've got a bunch of samples up. This is an old one. So Jess was a graduate of the web program. She's now faculty here. Some of you, she's away on maternity leave, so I don't know if you guys have ever been lucky enough to have Jess as an instructor or not. Do you know Jess at all? Coming back from maternity leave soon. Okay, so you guys haven't had her. So here is her portfolio. So it shows her design skills, right? She lists kind of the technologies. And then she has links to a whole bunch of her projects and describes what the projects were about. She included some testimonials. So Jess did this as kind of a single page, which you are not going to do. You'll need to have multiple pages. That one's a little old. Envy graduated from the program. I believe he graduated 2 years ago, and he's been working as a web and mobile developer for a local business that's actually run by another Georgian grad. So he's featured and tagged all of his projects. Again, he used a single page, which I'm going to forbid you from doing, and I'll explain why in a bit. And then here are a few other ones. These ones are from, I think, from 4 years ago. So Haewon was an international student from Korea. She made a really creative nav bar. And she showcased some of her work. And some of it was work she did in school, and others were things she did on co-op. She listed her skills and built a working contact form. So kind of clever design. Yuta is also from, I think, 4 years ago. So Yuta, I believe, is working at Goose Digital, which is a digital design agency. They're based in Newmarket, not too far from Barrie. He was another international student from Japan. So he talked about himself. He linked, I had a resume here, described his technical strengths and skills, and then featured a whole bunch of his projects. And some of these were projects, again, some of them were things he did in school, and others were like some freelance or some co-op work that he did. So you can see this is a great selling tool when Yuta was out in the job market, that he could show somebody what he was capable of doing. And obviously he'd made sure it was, mobile responsive. And lastly, this was Raj. Raj was a classmate of Haewon and Yuta. I think Raj might actually be running his own business. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to him for a little while. So he also did photography. So not only the skills we taught here, but any skills that are relevant. And then he featured. So a couple of these were projects he did in my classes. This is, Scott's famous Automoblocks project that he probably had you guys do. And some other things. So I would think these links would give you a pretty good idea of what kind of the end product should be of your portfolio. Right? It's something that reflects you, your skills, your abilities, your interests, your work. Okay, and all of these links are in the document. So to set up your project, you're going to use the Express Generator NPM package. We are going to install that globally today. And when you use it, you have to make sure you choose the HBS template options for your views. It's not the default. So if you forget this option, it will give you a different kind of template engine that we're not working with. So you want to make sure you choose that option. You'll have to create a shared header. So there is a built-in layout template, much like there was a layout file in Visual Studio. We get a much more stripped down, simplified layout with the Express Generator. So we will create a shared header so that all of your pages will have that header. There's Raj. He's a fun guy. You'll also create a shared footer, and in the footer, you should be linking to your GitHub and LinkedIn profiles. You should not include other social media links like your personal Facebook or Instagram page unless they're going to be relevant to you professionally. So depending on the content of what you put on your other social media channels, if you use them primarily for work and web stuff, then link them in. But if you use them for personal reasons, they should not be part of your profile. On the homepage, you're just going to add some content, a little bit about yourself. So really, the purpose of the project is you are marketing yourself. So Raj just had a simple graphic with you will figure out what kind of content makes sense on your homepage. You then have to create at least 3 additional views, one called About, with a bit more about who you are and your skills, one that shows your projects, and then a contact page so if an employer is interested, they can get in touch with you. Okay. Now, a couple of the samples I've shown you, students did these on one scrollable page. You're not allowed to do that this year because I want to see that you are mapping URLs to the different views as opposed to different bookmarks on one page. So your header will need links to each of these pages. You can make other pages as well if you want. You have to make sure that any static assets like images, media, JavaScript, CSS, they go in the appropriate folders inside. There's a public directory that the Express generator will build. It's kind of like the www root folder we had in ASP.NET. So it's for the static stuff. I want you to customize the look of the sites. You can either do your own CSS work, you can use a third-party theme, you can use a framework like Bootstrap or pure CSS or Material Design, or any combination thereof. Okay, but the point is, make the site your own. You're trying to sell your design and development skills here. Make sure you commit to GitHub regularly. So I'd like to see that you have at least 4 commits spread over at least 2 calendar days. And you should also have a README file in your repository that explains the application. Make sure you use the git ignore. It's on Blackboard, or you can even create your own simple git ignore file. We'll do that to make sure that the node modules folder is excluded. So node modules should not get included in your Git repo. And make sure you publish the site to Heroku and include the link both in your README and on Blackboard. Okay, now you have 3 opportunities for bonus marks if you are interested. Number 1 is create a working contact form that will actually send an email. So there are some NPM packages out there that are used for sending mail. So if you want 1 bonus mark, you can try and integrate one successfully. Number 2, you can create an external document that includes wireframes, an explanation of your technologies, and a style guide that details your visual elements like fonts and colors. And the last opportunity for bonus, sorry, I thought I had a sample, is to actually attach a domain name to your portfolio. You may get, I think if you have a GitHub student pack, you get a free domain name. You can also buy them for cheap, like less than $20 a year, I think at namecheap.com. So it's for a bonus, so you certainly don't have to do this. What are they? I don't know. Like if I looked for, let's say, richfreeman.ca. What are they charging? So $15 for a domain name. So for example, Envy, he registered his own domain name. I think, and Jess did the same. You don't have to do this, but otherwise, your URL looks like this. So running it under your own domain name is a good idea, not required, but I will give you 1 bonus. Sorry, this should say bonus. Just update the document. So those are opportunities for bonus marks. Okay, so a couple marks for setting up your site with the Express generator, 4 marks for your header, that you've got links to the different views, a couple marks for your footer, it should include your GitHub and LinkedIn profile links, 8 marks for the views and routes, so creating the different views, making the links to those views functional, and putting meaningful or useful content in. 4 marks for your CSS, 2 marks for your version control deploying to the server, and then your 3 bonus opportunities. So I'll be honest with you, you're really not doing tons of Node coding in this assignment. You're using Node as the backbone to set up your application and do the URL routing. The rest of the site is largely HTML, CSS. Okay, but the goal of it is that you have a website that you're proud of, that you feel reflects you and showcases what you can do. Yeah, I mean, I had some really good ones. And a lot of students have put a lot of effort. Actually, there was another good one. I don't know if it's still up. Student from last year. I'll have to see if I can find it. Okay, so I will leave the design up to you. But the goal of this is in 2 weeks, you have created for yourself a really kind of professional online presence for yourself to complement your GitHub and LinkedIn profiles. Are there any questions? I'll just re-upload the document, those couple of changes to it. Any questions at all about what to do? As we go through this semester, you can certainly add more projects and things you're doing in your other classes. You should be constantly updating this with your work to show off what you can do. Okay, I'd love to get some really great portfolios that I can add to my list so that I can show some of your portfolios to my class next year. Say, hey, look at what the class of 2022 did. Here's some awesome projects and portfolios to inspire them. Matt, there's no fixed answer to that. Like Haywan did, I think she did 3. Envy did many more. I would say you want to showcase at least 3. Like try to find, like I would think certainly, for example, most of the projects you did in our .NET class, if you still have those projects, even if you don't have a live link because your Azure has expired, you could still run it locally and take a screenshot and describe the project. So I would do at least 3. There's not really any maximum. Like Envy's done, what has he got here? He's got 12, which is a lot. You may not have that many, but I would try for at least 3 projects that you're proud of. It's a great question. Are there questions from anybody else about the portfolio assignment? And I'd like you to get a chance to see previous projects from previous years. A, just to get a better picture of what the end product might look like, and B, just to give you some inspiration and some motivation, to see what you guys are capable of. Okay, so you have 2 weeks. Setting up the project with the Express generator is really simple. We're going to do it today with an in-class application. And it's a couple of commands in the command line to create your application shell. And then it's really just a question of creating one controller, creating a couple of views, setting up the URL, dispatching, and then the rest of it is just HTML and CSS. Once you've set the pages up, then it's really your canvas to go ahead and showcase some of your other skills. So let's dive into the Express generator and HBS templating. So we're going to look at what the generator is. We'll play around with HBS view templating, and we'll talk about why we're going to use HBS as opposed to some of the other template engines that are available with the generator. And we're also going to look at how do we host our node applications. So how do we use the CI/CD, the continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline model that we learned last semester? How does that work in the node world? So we'll do all those things today. So the tool for building out a project is called the Express generator, and we'll use it anytime moving forward now. Anytime we want to build a new project, we'll use the Express generator. So we're going to want to install this tool globally, which we'll do shortly. That's going to allow you to use the generator both to build our in-class application that we're going to start working with. I know we've been kind of building just simple standalone files, really. We haven't been building an actual site the last few weeks, but that'll change. So we're going to use the generator today to start building an in-class site, and then you're going to use the generator again to build your portfolio. So you'll build a separate project with it. Now, by default, the generator uses a view template engine called Pug. Pug is, so if we don't specify what syntax to use in our views, it's going to use Pug, which used to be known as Jade. I used to use Pug because it's cool. It basically writes a lot of our tags for us. But debugging is really tricky because the code, the indenting is very specific. And if you mess up the indenting, it makes debugging very hard. I don't know if any of you have ever worked with Python or learned Python, but if you've used Python at all, you know Python is the same way. It doesn't use curly brackets, but code has to be indented in a certain way. It's interpreted based on kind of the tabs, which means it can be difficult to debug. Pug uses the same syntax. I found in using it in class, we spent a lot of time debugging. So instead, we're going to use a view engine called Handlebars or HBS. The other nice thing about Handlebars or HBS, much easier to debug, and the syntax for HBS is very similar to the syntax of Angular, which we are going to be using. We're going to kind of redo our front end, our UI with Angular later in the semester. So by using HBS, it kind of works. It transitions nicely from HBS to Angular because the actual syntax around it looks very similar. So once we install the generator, which we'll install globally, we use it with this command. We'll run the command npx and then express-generator. So use the Express generator tool, and then we give our application a name. And then to avoid getting the default of this Pug view engine, we'll use --view equals HBS. So we'll be setting an option to use HBS. And then we'll just go into our new directory and install the dependencies, and we'll have a working application. So our application is going to look something like this. So I just ran the command. So if I create a project called new app name with HBS, it will create a folder. It'll create public, and then inside of public, we'll get a JavaScript, and images, and a style sheets folder. We'll get a very simple default style sheet created for us. We'll get a roots folder, which are basically the controllers. We'll get a views folder, and then we'll get a few views inside, an error view, an index view, and a layout view. And all these have HBS extensions. The app.js is like our main starting file, and we already know what package.json is. It tracks all our dependencies and information about our app. And then the bin folder, this is where the node compiler will actually put a compiled version of our code. So this is what will be the result, and then we'll run those commands. So we're going to go through this whole process. You can also read about the Express generator on the Express site. So it'll tell us to install it globally, and then basically we will run that npx command. So you can see I said we're going to use HBS. So there's really three different, sorry. Yeah, there's really three different view styles. There's EJS, handlebars, and Pug, but Pug is the default. So we'll want to make sure that we use this option of minus HBS instead. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. I will open up the project we've been working with, which has been, it's just been called Lesson 1. And then I'm just going to open my terminal with View and Terminal. And when I open my terminal, it takes me inside. I'm still inside my Lesson 1 folder. I don't want to be in here because if we run our commands in here, the new project we're going to build is going to be inside this existing Lesson 1 folder. So I just want to go up to my root node directory. So I'm just going to run the command in here, cd and ... So that just takes me now, you can see, I know it can be a little hard to read my terminal. Maybe I can increase the font size down here. I'm not sure. We'll have to check. So we should just be in our root node folder. Once I'm in my root node folder, I want to install the Express generator as a global tool. So I can run the command npm I express-generator -g for global. I'll put it in the chat as well. So we only have to run this command one time, and then we can use the Express generator to build as many Express applications as we want. So I'm going to hit enter. Install the generator. So go ahead and do that. It doesn't take very long. So now we can use the Express generator to create a application shell for us. So now I'm going to run the command npx express-generator. And now we want to give our application a name. Now I had an idea for a website. I know sometimes in the past I've solicited a bunch of ideas and we put up a poll on Poll Everywhere and then picked what we wanted to build. But I was thinking, I had an idea this morning. I always get my best ideas in the shower. I was thinking what I'd like to do, that I have an idea for one, but I will put it out to you. One of the things that has occurred to me is that it's a common issue that a lot of students haven't really done a whole lot of research or looking around at the employers in their area. So I was thinking that we could make a site where we can start to track a number of the employers that are in the web design and web development space kind of in this area in Simcoe County. That way you guys might become aware and familiar with who some of those companies are and what some of their areas of specialty are. Any thoughts around that? Do you like that idea? I mean, we don't have to do that. We can build something else if you want. But that was my idea this morning in the shower. If you haven't, okay, there's one. Yes, sounds good. Let me know if you like that idea. If you have another suggestion, we can explore other ideas as well. Okay, it's another thumbs up. Okay, well, unless there's a kind of a groundswell wanting to do something else, then I'm going to suggest we go with that approach. Particularly, you guys are coming to the end. You've only got 3 months left for graduation. So for those of you who have not been really looking for employment, maybe this will be a bit of a spur for you. So I'm going to call this, we'll maybe call the app Job Tracker. And then we want to specify --view equals HBS. So we're going to use the Express generator to create a new project. We're going to call the project job-tracker, and we're going to set the view engine to HBS. So I'm going to run that. And the generator is going to build a job tracker folder. Okay, so it says, need to install the following packages. Express job generator, is it okay to proceed? I'm just going to type Y. Yes, it is. Okay to proceed. And the generator runs very quickly. It created a job tracker folder, and then it created all of these subdirectories and files inside. If I go and look in my node folder in Windows, I should see now the job tracker and all of these subfolders and files. I'll just go and have a look. So I'll go to my C node. Here's my job tracker folder now. That was time-stamped today, 1 minute ago. And when I open it up, I've got 4 subfolders, as well as a package.json and an app.js. It's small. The imprint here is small. If I look right now, it's not even 4 kilobytes. Okay, so very, very small footprint so far. But there are a couple of other instructions here. It says change directories. So we should enter our new job tracker folder and then run npm install. So this is going to install all the dependencies that are listed in package.json. So I'm going to do that. Type cd job-tracker. So we're going to enter our new project. And then it wants me to run npm install, or the shortcut now npm I. Will accomplish the same thing. So I'm going to run npm I. Which added 63 npm packages to our project. So the overall size now is going to be bigger. When I go back here, now that we've installed the npm packages, it's not huge. It's 6.5 megabytes. So we've got about 6 megs here worth of npm packages. So now up in the top part of my code editor, I'm going to open my new job tracker folder. And we're going to work in this folder for the next probably like 6 or 7 classes. So we can kind of explore a little bit about what's here. We know what obviously node modules are. The bin folder just contains this one file that will tell our application to run on port 3000. And it uses similar code to what we've seen so far. It uses HTTP library to create a server and listen on port 3000. So we don't typically touch this file. Usually just let that go. In public, this is where all our static stuff goes. So if we've got images, and they give us kind of a very basic style sheet, which we are obviously free to override, and we will. The roots folder, we're going to rename this one. The roots, it's a really strange name. These are actually the controllers. So our Express generator builds 2 controllers, one called index that requires Express and creates an Express router. So similar, kind of similar to what we did in your lab, where you had a route for me, a route for mom, a route for dad. So here we were handling any requests in the root. And in this case, we are calling response.render, and then it's rendering a view called index. So this is very similar to like the return view statement in an ASP.NET controller. Right? We get a request at this URL, and we are going to render or display a view with this name.
All right, I gotta be right back. I'll get the dog.
Okay. And then we have in views. So here is our index view. And here you can actually see our HBS, our handlebars syntax. So wherever you see these double curly braces, this represents a server-side variable, something that's coming from the controller. Okay, so our controller is returning a view called index, but it's also, we're passing in a JSON object. So this is how we pass data from a controller to a view. In ASP.NET, it looked something like this. It would be something like return view index, and then we would pass in, a title variable. So this is the equivalent. Res.render is the equivalent of return view. And then instead of passing in a data model, we just pass everything in JSON. And then in our view, we can display that server-side value by wrapping it in these handlebar tags. So this is called handlebar or mustache syntax. Why is it called handlebars? Because it looks like two handles that you could grab onto. Or it also looks like a mustache double mustache turned on its side. And when we work with Angular, Angular uses this same syntax for things like variables. So this is why our transition from starting with HBS and then moving to Angular is going to be fairly smooth, because we use this same handlebar or mustache syntax around our dynamic values. We've got a simple layout template here. So it includes our style sheet, and then it injects the page body using this triple handlebars syntax. Page title gets rendered here in the header. And then this is a pretty important file, our app.js. So it lists all of the main dependencies here, and it maps the URLs to the controllers. It says our views are found in the views folder. We're using HBS as our templating. Our application needs to be able to parse JSON. And that our static assets, so images, JavaScripts, client-side scripts, CSS, they will all be inside the public folder. And then we've got these two roots. So this is where we are mapping, much like you did in your lab. We are mapping URLs. So in our lab, we mapped the URL to a specific function, right? Like last week. So we had /me, and that called a me method. You had /mom that called a mom method. Because we're now using the MVC pattern, we are mapping any URLs in the root to use our index controller. And any URLs that start with /users, those are mapped to the user's controller instead. And then we've got the package.json that lists our dependencies. So you can see it includes both Express and HBS. Now our application, much like when we create an application with the ASP.NET template in Visual Studio, this is a working application. So if we want, we could just go back to the terminal. And to start our application, we can just use the nodemon command. We don't even have to specify a file name now, because when we run nodemon, it looks in package.json for a start script. And the start script, it uses node to execute the compiled version of our application that's in bin www. So I can just type nodemon in my terminal. And then I should be able to just hit our usual URL of localhost 3000. And I get a page with the title of Express. It says welcome to Express. It also shows Express up here in the page title. So just run the nodemon command, and this is what the Express generator gives us. This is the starting point where we can now start to customize the application. So your app should be running. What if we want to, let's maybe start by, we're going to start making some small changes and additions to this. Where would we go if we wanted to change the content that displays on the home page? Right? We don't want it to say Express, we want it to say Job Tracker. So which file would we go into, do you think, if we want to modify what is displayed here? Let's figure this out, make a small change, get it working, and then we'll take a break. Yeah, we want to change this so it doesn't say Express. We want it to say Job Tracker and welcome to Job Tracker. Where would we go? Which file should we look at if we want to change that? There's a couple of possibilities. So we don't want it to say Express, we want it to say Job Tracker instead. So which file is being rendered right now? Where would we find the page that's being displayed? Right, inside of views, we've got index. But in here, do we see the word Express anywhere? Right, Express doesn't appear in the code. Right, this is just a variable that comes from our controller. So our controller is under roots and index. So right here on line 6, this is where we're giving the variable of title a value. So we should just be able to change it in our controller. So I'm going to change line 6 to Job Tracker and save my changes. Nodemon is going to restart. And now when I refresh, that value of Job Tracker, that title is displayed. Yep. You got it, Matt. That's right. So on line 6, we're loading the index view and we're passing the variable called title, and we're assigning it a value of Job Tracker. So when our index view loads, it's displayed in the H1 tag as well as in the P tag. So we're rendering the view and we're passing it a JSON object. That JSON object contains a variable called title, which is rendered using our handlebars syntax. Okay, I'm going to put this code up on GitHub and we're going to take a break. But before I put it initialize, like I don't have git initialized in this folder yet, I want to go to Blackboard and grab the git ignore file for Node. So when I put it up on GitHub, it will exclude the Node modules and a whole bunch of other stuff that we don't want on GitHub. So where do I find that? I'll go to Weekly Learning and Tools and Resources. And down at the very bottom, there's a file. This is the git ignore file for Node. It links here. So I am going to go to the click on raw. So here's my full link. I'll put it in the chat. I'm just going to copy everything here, the entire contents. I'll go back to my code editor and I'm going to make a new file called .gitignore. And then I'm just going to paste in all that stuff that I grabbed from GitHub. So it's going to exclude Node modules. It's also going to exclude the environment files, which we're going to work with later, kind of like our app settings in Visual Studio. So I'm going to save that, and now I can put my stuff up on GitHub. I'm going to run git init. Then I'm going to want to add all my files. You do not have to put your files up on GitHub, but I'm obviously going to share mine. So I'm going to make a commit, which is lesson 4, part 1. Create express generator site. And now I will pop over to GitHub and create a repository. And then I'll upload my code. And then we will take a break. So this is going to be Comp2106, Winter 22, Job Tracker. So mine will be public. I'm going to connect my repository. And I'll upload my code. And because I have that git ignore file, hey, why did my node modules weren't supposed to show up here? I will have to figure out what happened. I do not know why my node modules, they should not have been uploaded. I'll have to figure out what went wrong there. Okay, we are going to take a break here. So my site that I created with the generator is on GitHub. Here is the repository link if you need to see it. But I really only changed one thing. I mean, the express generator did everything. I just changed this one value on line 6 of the index route. Everything else is from the express generator untouched. Okay, let's take a break here. We will come back at 10:07 and we'll look at how do we take the what the generator gave us and start to make it into a more functional application. Okay, code's on GitHub. We will be back in 10.